So welcome, officially welcome everyone. Super excited to be here. I am delighted to talk about LinkedIn. This is kind of what I eat, live, breathe, sleep. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I work with a number of clients. If you're not familiar with me, I've done a couple presentations in the community before around LinkedIn, but I really wanted to do something today that is going to kind of bring us up to date. For those of you who have watched prior presentations, or those of you who are like, I don't know you from anyone, Mindy, this is my very first time meeting you. So I feel like this will be very practical. I really want to share 5 specific things that you can do on LinkedIn. Of course, it's not going to be completely comprehensive. 60 minutes is not enough time to go through everything on LinkedIn. But what I really want to focus on today is actionable. Like, what can you take away from today's presentation that you can actually do and make some changes to your LinkedIn profile that will actually start getting you results? So we're going to focus on 5 specific tactics today. But if you have questions about something we are not covering in particular, I wanted to save time for questions at the end. So feel free, anything LinkedIn related. If you have other questions, you're like, I know, Mindy, we didn't really touch on this in the presentation, but can I ask? Yes, you can. And if I don't know the answer, I'll just tell you I don't know the answer, and I can follow up afterwards. All sounding good? Yes? Cool. Awesome. We'll dive right in. I may be admitting people as we're going to, in case I look a little distracted, but I'm going to share my screen here. All right, so talking about LinkedIn and 5 LinkedIn profile hacks to land your next client or dream job. And I know a lot of us are not using LinkedIn in this way. Some of us are just there to build connections, really get to know people. I really like using LinkedIn for networking, even if I'm not like aggressively prospecting or trying to get leads or anything like that. So I feel like there are a lot of uses for LinkedIn, not just landing your client or dream job, but today, we're going to focus specifically on these aspects and how LinkedIn can help you here. So what you'll walk away with by the end of this action taker training today, we are going to focus on 5 profile tweaks, which I mentioned earlier, that you can make now to get results on LinkedIn. When it comes to LinkedIn, it really is about getting results. Like, it's not, you shouldn't really be spending time on LinkedIn if you're just kind of like fiddling around, not exactly sure why you're there or what you're doing. I feel like LinkedIn can be a very powerful channel, but not if you approach it from the mindset of, oh, this is just another social channel. It's not Instagram, it's not Facebook, it's special. And so you really want to be thoughtful and strategic in how you approach LinkedIn. And then really want to take away that every single one of these things we're going to talk about today is like ready to implement. There's nothing so complicated where you can't actually implement after you learn it today. So these will all be very actionable. There will be access to the slides too. So I know some of you have asked, if you want the slides after the training, don't feel like you have to screenshot every single slide. I will attach them and share them along with the recording. So don't worry about that. And then this is not just another flipped up workshop with a pitch slap at the end. I'm not selling you anything. So there is no sell at the end of this. I really want this to be focused on learning and sharing ideas. So I'd love to hear from you too. Like, what is working for you? How are you using LinkedIn? What things have you run into that you want some assistance on or some coaching or some help on? So here's a couple of people that have been through this same training. This is what they have said. Adolfa, she went through the training, and for her, she really wanted to make sure that she was getting visits to her personal page, so her personal profile, which we are talking about today, and also her business page. So there is such a thing as a LinkedIn company page on LinkedIn. So she really wanted to drive traffic to both, and so that was her intention, and she was pretty happy. She's like, "Hey, Mindy, it's actually working. Like, it wasn't as complicated or as complex as I thought it would be." It's like, yeah, if you know like a few of the triggers, which we're going to talk about today, you can make a lot of impact without having to spend a ton of time on LinkedIn. And then Josh Brower, after working together, he was pretty excited because he landed his dream job at Google and was able to transition into a relatively new field. So it's really important when you pay attention to LinkedIn and realize it can open up a lot of opportunities. Some you may be looking for, some you may not be looking for, but they kind of come your way when your profile is optimized. So that's pretty exciting. So 3 things to really be aware of today. Number 1, if you are pretty comfortable, if you're pretty savvy with LinkedIn, these things we're talking about today are not really the basic stuff. Like, okay, the basic things like obviously have a LinkedIn profile that everyone already knows. These are true performance hacks, but they're very simple. I wanted to make sure that they were simple and easy to implement. So keep that in mind today. These are not just like the everyday run of the mill things. I really want to share things that you may not have heard before or been aware of. And number 2, these these tactics actually work regardless of your business, your career, industry, level of expertise, or niche. So even if you're not a business owner, that's fine. I'm going to show some examples of business owners. If you're a job seeker, that's fine too, because I'm going to show some examples there. So you can use LinkedIn. Every single person on the planet, pretty much, unless you are like in the CIA or something and your work is, needs to be kind of kept underground, you need a LinkedIn profile. So how good it is up to you. And what you want to do with it is up to you, but you need to have one because people are looking you up here. If you are any type of professional, LinkedIn is critical to your personal brand. And then number 3, if you ever plan to get new opportunities like a job or clients with LinkedIn, your profile is essential. So a lot of people will approach LinkedIn and think, oh, it's like other channels. I can just kind of post content and I will get people looking at my content. That's not really how LinkedIn works. Your profile is the starting point. So you have to have a great profile for people to pay attention to you on LinkedIn. Your content is not going to do it in itself. So you always start with the profile. So even if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, like if you're here and you're like, Mindy, I actually need one of those, that's okay. You will still take away some things from today's training that will be really helpful. It's totally fine. You are in the right place. There's going to be a lot of value in this training. And like I said, you will have access to the slides and any other follow-ups too. If you have questions after this and you don't think of them during the training, that's fine. Just reach out to me afterwards. I love nerding out on this stuff. So any LinkedIn questions that you have, I love talking LinkedIn. So what your LinkedIn profile is really meant to do, like what is really special about it, it is really not about getting popular. And I think there are some misconceptions around that, like, oh, well, if I'm not going to become a thought leader, if I'm not trying to like build this big, giant personal brand, why do I need LinkedIn? It really is about opportunities and being open to new opportunities, whether that's connecting with people, whether that is getting a job, whether that is getting new clients, whatever an opportunity looks like to you, your LinkedIn profile can help you attract those. And opportunities come from relationships. It is not about selling. Like we are not talking about how to sell people. We are not trying to send them spammy connection invitations or gamify or hack the algorithm. This is literally about using LinkedIn to build relationships with each other, with other professionals. And that's where the magic happens. And that's what I love about LinkedIn, because the more relationships you build, the more opportunities you get. The more people you know, the more opportunities will come your way, especially when you make an impact, when you are being yourself, when you're being authentic, when you are truly engaging with people on LinkedIn. And the thing with LinkedIn, people understand, like they can tell if you are just trying to share content to get attention or just, like sharing an alternative perspective just so you can get likes. People can tell that. So when you come to LinkedIn, bring yourself, bring your real true self, your professional self to LinkedIn. And that's really what's going to resonate with people when you show up as yourself. Don't feel like you have to put on a different persona to be here. Bring your professional self to LinkedIn. All right, a few more people to admit. All right, so this is Mango Tree. And I like to think about LinkedIn like this, like that is actually the mango tree that is behind me, that picture of the mango tree. So I think of the LinkedIn profile like a mango tree. And so when it comes to a mango tree, every part of that tree is essential to create the actual mangoes we love. Well, I'm not sure if all of you love mangoes. I love mangoes. They are my absolute favorite fruit. Yes, okay, I see some raising hands. Like some people love them or hate them, like everyone else in my family. It's like, I could take or leave the mangoes, Mindy, but I go crazy. When it's mango season, like I still have like a freezer half full of mangoes from our last mango season. So I love mangoes. They are my favorite fruit, but it takes the whole tree to get the mangoes. I think, a lot of times we're like, oh, well, just give me the mangoes. I don't need the tree. Just the mangoes would be fine, please. But if one part of that tree is missing, obviously we're not going to get mangoes. If there are no roots, no mangoes. No strong trunk, no mangoes. No sunshine, if we're not taking care of the tree, we're not pruning the branches. And all of this comes into creating those perfect mangoes and a really great harvest too. That's what I have noticed as well. Like the tree behind me, when it goes off, we get like hundreds, I think probably close to like 1,000, maybe more mangoes from that tree. Yeah, our freezer, we're like handing them to neighbors and I try to process them, but I'm like spending hours a day like processing mangoes, trying to freeze them. And my husband's like, I need more freezer space, Mindy. Give it back to me. But a great mango tree gives you a ton of mangoes. And the LinkedIn profile is so similar. That doesn't happen overnight though. I think a lot of times we hop over to LinkedIn and we're like, oh, as soon as I optimize my profile, I'm going to have like tons of leads, tons of opportunities. Everyone's going to notice me. That's not how it works. It's like a tree. You're planting the tree, you're watering the plant. You're watching it grow, you're nurturing it over time. And for me, like people ask me, well, Mindy, that's amazing. You're getting all this business from LinkedIn. I said, well, I've been using LinkedIn like for 12 years, 10, 12 years, thereabouts, depending on when you start counting, very actively. So it does take time to build LinkedIn, but when you start in the right place, when you pay attention to your profile first, you can nurture that tree and it can grow more quickly. So just kind of keep that in mind. LinkedIn is a long game. It's not like TikTok, where a lot of my colleagues in the business space are like, oh, hop over to TikTok and you can go viral and boom, you have a business. That's not how it works on LinkedIn. But I think that's the beauty of LinkedIn is it has staying power. It's not like a channel that just kind of like pops up out of nowhere, you become famous and then it disappears. When you invest in LinkedIn, it happens over time and you get those new opportunities. It's a trusted channel and it's the only place where professionals like you and me go to network with each other and talk business. Other channels, where they're there to entertain, to gamify, but LinkedIn is really, really special. And so we need to treat it as such. So like a mango tree, your LinkedIn profile consists of several different sections. So I break it up into 7 to be exact. And each of these sections has a very specific role. And when they all work together, that's when the opportunities happen. So you can't just pay attention to one. You can't just pay attention to the top of your profile and forget about the rest. You have to pay attention to all of the sections in your profile and make sure that they are working together. Okay, so we'll talk through them. I'll show you an example too of a before and after, so you'll be able to see what this looks like. But the real question is, what happens when a section is missing? Like how many new opportunities are you losing daily, weekly, monthly, and you didn't even know? There are so many people that come to our profiles and just hop off if they don't find what they're looking for. And so it's up to us, it's our responsibility to make sure that our LinkedIn profile gives our people what they're looking for. And so we're going to talk about some of those things like, okay, what are they looking for? How can we make our profile more compelling to our people? So let's kind of work the numbers. I like numbers sometimes. Sometimes I like numbers, but I like numbers when it comes to opportunities. Like, give me those numbers. I like those numbers. So do you know how many opportunities you get from LinkedIn now? Like, if you had to think about it, you're probably like, most of the people I talk to are like, I don't know, can't really think of any, or maybe one. Like, they're like, well, I had this one friend. That's okay. If you're not thinking of any, that's all right. But if it's one per month, like think about that. Like if you had one per month, not one over a lifetime, one per month, can you imagine if you were to simply increase it to even 2 to 3 per month? I mean, that's a lot, right? And for many of us, that's all we need. Like, yeah, for me, it's like if I'm getting 1, 2, 3 opportunities per month, that's my business right there. So in terms of the power of LinkedIn, you don't have to have a ton of opportunities for it to work for you. You just need to be consistent and to be able to know and feel confident that your profile is generating the right opportunities, not just any opportunity, the right ones. So let's look at some examples here. I like to do side-by-side comparisons. So say you're on LinkedIn, for you that are in business or wanting to start a business, or you have a side hustle and you want to get new clients using LinkedIn. So let's talk about profile number 1. So profile number 1, profile views. So if you're not sure what profile views mean, this means that 100 people per month are viewing your profile. That's actually pretty good. Most people that don't really use LinkedIn, they're probably getting like 30 to 50, 60, 70, somewhere in their profile views per month. So let's say from those 100, per month views, you're getting about 1 sale per month. And maybe the price point of that sale will just throw $5,000 on it. So total sales, $5,000. That's still pretty good. I don't think any of us would balk at that. Like, okay, I'll take that $5,000 per month. That's pretty good. But let's look at profile number 2. So profile number 2, say this person is getting 500 views per month. And why is that? Because they've optimized their profile, maybe posting a little bit of content as well. And for them, okay, they're getting about 3 sales per month. And then that price point, again, let's keep the same price point, 5,000, 15,000 per month. So very stark contrast between the two profiles. And it's because of the optimized profile, increasing that traffic and really being able to attract the right opportunities. So say you're like, Mindy, well, I'm not in the business owner space. Let's talk about dream jobs. Okay, let's talk about getting your dream job. So again, let's take profile number 1. We've got 100 per month, 100 profile views per month. This is probably translating to about an interview per one, about one interview per month. Job offers, okay, you usually don't get a job offer for every interview. So probably 0 to 1 per month. So how long is it going to take to land the job? Most people, about 3 to 6 months when they're looking for a new job. That's pretty typical on LinkedIn. So let's look at profile number 2. So profile views, let's say, okay, let's go back to that 500 per month. So that translates to about 4 interviews per month. That's pretty good, I would say. Job offers, probably, let's say half of them, you're getting a job offer for. And maybe you're being picky. So you're like, well, I'm not going to take every offer I get. So how long is it going to take you to land a job at this point? 1 to 2 months. So you can see like the difference between the profiles by just attracting more of the right eyeballs to your profile. Your opportunities are just by nature, they're going to be more. So it's really important to pay attention. Some people don't pay attention to their views, but your views do matter. So as you make changes to your profile, pay attention to your profile views, because that number is going to tell you if your profile is working and getting the right attention. All right, so these LinkedIn profile hacks that we're about to talk through are really created to increase your opportunities. So we're not approaching it necessarily from the personal branding or just making you look good. It's really about opportunities. And that automatically increases sales or helps you land your dream job. So we're going to jump right in. And as you pay attention, also listen for the final profile hack we'll talk about, because just after my colleague and friend, Maria, implemented this, she sent me this message and she's like, Mindy, I just sent my proposal to my first Fortune 500 client. She was pretty excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. So I love stories like these too. So if you have a great story, you're like, Mindy, I made this change and this happened. Let me know. I love to hear them. All right, so let's talk about the first one. So LinkedIn profile hack number 1, I call this your personal audio intro. So you see that little pink arrow that's kind of pointing to my speakerphone that's right next to my name. Now, if you go to LinkedIn and you click on that, some of you may know about this already. Some of you may not. If you click on that, you will actually hear, it's almost like a voicemail. So you'll hear a little message from me that says, aloha, my name is Mindi Rosser. And it's pretty much like my little pitch. It's my little mission statement. It's introducing people to me. So that is really helpful to do. And what you'll need to do is you'll need to have your iPhone, or your phone, doesn't have to be an iPhone, and have the LinkedIn app downloaded to it to be able to record this. I'll show you how in just a moment. But what that does is it automatically lets people hear my voice, which also increases the connection component. When it comes to LinkedIn, sometimes we go to people's profiles and it's like, it's just a picture, like for me, sometimes I'm like, it's just an avatar. It's like, okay, that's a picture. I don't even know if it's current. It may be 10 years old, and then somebody just liked that picture. Or is that really them? Is that really how they look? How do they sound? Because there are so many components to how we trust people. And a lot of it is voice. Like for me, I'm like I don't know about you, I'm like a podcast fanatic. Like if you are in my ears, like if I'm listening to you on a podcast, it's like there's trust that comes along with that. And that little speakerphone allows you to start building trust with people who don't know you. And so you can use that. And it's so easy too. It takes 10 seconds, to record that. And all of a sudden you have made a major impact and are starting to build that bridge towards people who don't know you. So it's a really powerful feature that you can use on LinkedIn. So here's how to do it. If you're like, Mindy, that sounds interesting. How do I do it? So first of all, set a timer for 5 minutes. Don't spend too long on this. Like this is a fast one. This is not something you're going to, deliberate over forever. Then choose a greeting for your intro. I like to say aloha just because I'm based on Oahu in Hawaii. So that kind of pulls people out and they go, wait, did you just say aloha? Like, I guess she did, so for me, that's kind of fun. So if you have one that is like, you're something that you would say in real life or local to your area, use that because it makes it fun. Then say your name, because this section is technically the name pronunciation area on LinkedIn. So the reason LinkedIn created this feature is for people who had difficult to pronounce names, so they could actually say their name for people. So we are using it a little more creatively, but make sure to say your name because people do want to know how to pronounce your name. Then let people know, first of all, who you are. So who you are is kind of like your job title. We'll talk a little bit about that when it comes to the LinkedIn profile headline as well, but who you are and whom you help. So what types of people do you work with? What types of people do you want to connect with? And what do you do? So basically, aloha, my name is this, and here's what I do. And then what you'll want to do is you want to think about one call to action. So do you want them to connect with you or do you want them to do something else? I like to just invite people to connect because that feels a lot less like salesy or pitchy to me. I have heard some people say, let's hop on a call, which I feel like is a little too direct. Like, I don't really want to go that far in my audio introduction, but you can say whatever you would like. Ideally, I would just say, let's connect on LinkedIn. So then you will go to your mobile device. So you will have to record this from your mobile device, and you will have to have the LinkedIn app. You'll go to your profile, and then you'll click on editing, that top section, and you will see add name pronunciation there. I think they may have changed it. I think it still says name pronunciation, but I've also seen audio introduction. So you will add that there, and then make sure to keep it to less than 10 seconds, because otherwise it will cut you off. And you can update this anytime. So this is a really fun way to, I think, engage and re-engage with your LinkedIn profile, share a little bit of your personality, and get your voice out there and attach it to your profile. So any questions on audio introductions? It's pretty straightforward. And I know there's some steps in here, but once you just pull out the app and give it a look, it's pretty straightforward. All right, cool. So with this tip, and on the topic of selling and like of putting ourselves out there, I'm not a salesperson. Like, I don't enjoy it, but we both know it's important to always be open to opportunities. So if some people are like, well, that feels like a little bit salesy, it's really not. So I like to look at it like this. I can't dance. Like, if you ask my kids, they laugh at me. They try to show me like these TikTok dances, and I'm like, don't ask me to dance. But I don't have to be a dancer to do Zumba. Like, go to a Zumba class, and it's like, okay, as long as I follow the instructor's moves, I can dance, and I can feel like I can dance. So it's very, very similar on LinkedIn. It's only when you don't have a routine or you don't have like the process to follow that you have to try to figure it out by yourself. And that can take a long time. So that's why today I really want you to feel like you have a framework and you have some things that you can really apply and step by step. All right, so let's talk about LinkedIn profile hack number 2. I call this the hooking with your headline. So your LinkedIn profile headline is really important. It's what shows up just below your name. If you're not sure what this is, it's that little area below your name. Most people will just put their job title in there. And one of the biggest mistakes is that people will either list everything they've ever done. Like, you're like, okay, you do like 10 things, or they will put nothing. Like, it's just like their job title and maybe the company where they work in their headline. So we want something kind of in between. We're looking for like that Goldilocks zone. We're not wanting to put everything we've ever done, but also we don't want it to be so bare that people don't know who we are. So most people will just list their job title and their company name, and then they kind of wonder why they don't stand out in the crowd of people who do what they do. So even if you're a job seeker or business owner, it's important to pay attention to this headline. So the key is really to craft a headline that grabs attention. Now, you're not doing this to, just for the sake of grabbing attention, obviously. It really needs to be aligned with who you are and what you do. But you really want to think about optimizing your headline for search and for search engines. So LinkedIn search is one thing, but also LinkedIn plays very well with Google search. So the two play very well together. So when people are looking you up, they may type in your name, like your first and last name, but they also may type in, like, they are like, oh, what's their business name? Or are they an author or a writer? They do, they will also try to type in something else to find you. So when you pop up in search, whether it's on LinkedIn in particular or in a Google search, you want to be sure that your headline is optimized for those search engines. So your name is really important. Your name area is critical. So make sure your name is correctly spelled and all of that. But then your headline is also critical, because that will tell people who you are and what you do. It will also help you rank well and accurately in search engines. So that's why it's important to pay attention to that. A lot of people will skip this section. So like, I'm just kind of putting my job title and company, what else do I need to put here? Make sure you get the right key words. So your LinkedIn headline is your first impression. When people come across you on LinkedIn, if you've spent much time on LinkedIn, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you go into, like, you just log into LinkedIn, you're in your news feed, somebody shares a post, what you see is their name, and you see like the first few words of their headline. So that's why the headline is really important, because that headline follows you everywhere. So your name and headline are kind of like tied together along with that profile photo. So make sure that they all work well together. And it's the first thing that people see when they see your name. So you want to make it count. This is what I use as the LinkedIn headline formula. It works like gangbusters, and it's simple to use. You may take a few iterations, so be patient with yourself. If you haven't ever worked on your LinkedIn headline before, you may have to do a couple drafts or kind of sit with it to make sure it feels right. I will show you some examples too. But the headline formula to follow is, first of all, who you are. I always like to lead with who you are. And when I say who you are, that's your job title. That's what people would call you. Like in my case, it says social selling strategist. It's like, are they the most exciting words? No, but it's how people perceive me on LinkedIn, and it ranks well. Like it's a really good keyword for me. So think about who you are and what would people call you. The one thing to be really careful about in the headline is not to get too clever. I have seen people use like alliteration or like do really clever things, but sometimes in that cleverness, we lose the clarity. So make sure that you aren't too clever. Like make sure that people actually understand who you are and also whom you help. So what target audiences, it could be more than one, do you work with? Or do you work inside of an organization? Who are you engaging with inside of the organization? Who are you working with? That is really important, especially for those of you who are business owners or do have a side hustle and you want to target your audience on LinkedIn. You need to make sure that they understand you work with them and people like them. So always call out your target audience. And then you want to talk about how you help them. What do you do? If you had to sum it up in a very short phrase, because in this section, you only have 220 characters. You want to write that down, 220 characters, that's including spaces to work with. So you have to be concise. So be thoughtful about the words that you choose here, but make sure you let people know what you do. Like I can say social selling strategist, but does that mean I'm working with people on Instagram? Does that mean I'm working with people on Facebook? Like I need to be specific and tell people I focus specifically on LinkedIn. So just be very specific about how you help people. And then the last one, the results you generate. So in working with you, what can they expect as a result? And that is key. Like, okay, if I work with you, I'm going to come away with what? Sometimes you may not want to call out your deliverables here. That, you don't have to be that particular, but you do want them to know, okay, if I work with you, you help me solve this problem, this is what I get as a result. So that should all be included inside of your LinkedIn headline. So I like to say, I'll show you some examples of how to do it. You can also look at my headline if you're curious and see how I use the formula as well. But it's key that you get the who you are, the whom you help, how you help them. The results you generate, sometimes that can be wrapped in with the how you help people too. All right. So any questions on the headline formula? I'm going to share some examples too. Okay. Yeah. Once you start writing and actually doing it, it makes a lot more sense. So here are some examples. So this first one we're looking at is Garth. And so Garth, he has a book. He's an author. He's a writer. He's also a financial services executive. And so you can see that financial services executive, that's the who. And he helps business leaders. Okay. So that's his target audience. And he helps them do what? Find purpose and fulfillment in their marketplace calling. So we can see the formula, the who, what, and the how. And then he's also, you see that little line break, the author of More Than Your Business Card. So he's trying to promote his book on LinkedIn. So that's how he wraps it all together. So then we have Chris. So Chris is the who, content and learning expert, also L&D leader. And who does she help? Tech companies. And what does she help them do? Create unique content, skill-based learning programs, and scale high-performing teams. So you can see she has 3. And I love the power of 3s too. Some of you that are in writing, you probably heard that. But if you have like 3 ways that you help people, listing 3 things is a really good way to get all of that verbiage in a simple way that people will understand. And then let's look at George. So George who is he? B2B sales effectiveness pioneer. And his is a little bit different. Like he doesn't say I'm helping certain companies. He says he's on a mission to elevate the sales profession with technology and partnerships. So for him, he's using the same formula, but it looks just a little bit different. So you can see he's still getting in the what and the how, and people that are in his niche understand exactly who he's working with. So that all makes sense. I love examples. And I feel like they help bring it to life for me. I'm like, okay, show me what this actually looks like, Mindi, because that makes a lot more sense. But I like to use the who helps, I like to use the helps in the middle or helping, then their target audience, and then what you actually do. So I think Garth and Chris, they're probably the easiest ones to emulate. All right, so let's move into LinkedIn profile hack number 3, telling your story in the about section. If you didn't know, LinkedIn does have a section that's called About. And a lot of people will pull their executive summary or their bio from their resume or something like that and put it in the About. It's a good place to start, but it's not what you want to end with. And then a lot of people have this misconception around the About section. Well, Mindy, nobody reads the About section. Nobody wants to read my whole, section. I'm like, well, okay. On that note, it is important to have. Yes, you are right. Most people are not going to read your About section word for word, especially if it's long, but they do skim it for the highlights. So when people come to your profile, what they will do is they will open the About section and then they will skim. They'll look for the paragraphs and the keywords that they want to see. So if they don't see what they were hoping to find, are they going to connect with you? Likelihood, probably not. They're probably going to hop off to somebody else's profile. So that's why you must have a completely optimized About section. You want to have the right keywords. You want to have the key phrases. You want to make sure that you are doing a little bit of storytelling in the About section. So here's an example, and you will have the slide afterwards too. But your LinkedIn About is your second impression. So we talked about the headline as your first impression. It's like, okay, this is great. We're hooking them with the headline. Now they're interested. Now they're on our profile. Now they're going to say, oh, to learn a little bit more about you. So what they will do is they will scroll through your profile. They're like, I like what I'm seeing. Let me open the About section. And then they will read through your About section. Most of them are going to skim. Like they will look for certain keywords like, okay, do you have services? Who do you work with? A lot of times they'll be looking for key phrases like, oh, do you do this? In their mind, there's something in the back of their mind like, do you do this? And if you can answer that in the About section, then you are going to pull them all the way through your profile and they're going to keep reading and you're going to have their interest. They're going to want to connect with you. So it's key that you can get in. It's almost like getting into the head of the person that you're trying to connect with. If you have a business and you have like a marketing avatar or, a certain target audience or something like that, that's a really good place to start. So you can think about them, you can visualize them as you're working on your About section, to make sure that you are really understanding them and that you are giving them what they want to see in this section. And yes, there is a little bit of writing involved. I get that. I've helped a lot of people work through this section because they're like, Mindy, that's so many characters. But really, if you break it down into paragraphs, like this one is a great one for those of you who like to reverse engineer. Like this example I'm showing is a really good one to use as an example and just go, oh, okay, we're kind of like leading with a question. We are kind of talking and calling out the target audience. I'm going to also show you like a before and after of a full profile so you can see how we did it there as well. But just keep in mind, it's about telling your professional story in this section. And how to open your About section, you really want to have a good opener. So you want to think about your target audience because they're the ones who are going to be reading this section. And I like to lead with a good question. Like I like to ask something, like many of you that have, done some marketing training may have heard something along the lines of, what question keeps your person up at night? What is it that's like driving them, or that question they really want to answer that you can help them solve? So leading with a question like that can be great. You can also lead with a statistic. If there's like a shocking statistic in your industry and you're like, oh, this would pull people out of their, just kind of doldrums. They'll be like, wow, that's so interesting. A statistic can work really well here. You can also start with a profound statement. So something that you believe or something that, would be considered a little bit alternative or maybe different perspective in your space can be a good way to start your About section. You can also, for those of you who are writers or have a writer background, tell a story. Like always default to telling a story because people love stories. And in your About section, you don't want it to feel too formal. You want it to feel like a story, like it's a little bit of your professional story. It's your narrative. And then when it comes to ending the About section, you want to end it with the call to action. And this call to action should be, usually I like to use connect. Let's connect on LinkedIn, or you can message me on LinkedIn. And again, you're calling out your target audience. You're always, always, always calling them out. You're always naming them. Like, for example, how I could end an About section would be, let's connect. If you're a, insert target audience here, and you need help solving insert problem here, let's connect. It could be something very, very simple. You could also put your email address here if you would like, but one word of caution, don't put too much in the calls to action section. For example, don't say, let's connect on my website. Follow me on Instagram. Oh, I'm on TikTok too. Here's my email and here's a link to my portfolio. That's too many places to send people. So think about the most powerful call to action. And for most people, it's like they're on LinkedIn. It's easiest to connect with you on LinkedIn. So invite them to connect, maybe give your email address. Some people also like to put a Calendly link here if they do discovery calls or something like that. It's up to you. I personally don't like putting my Calendly link public, but if you want to, you can put it in this section. So here is an example I'm going to talk through, and then I'm going to show you his profile. So this is Scott Baker. So we worked on his profile, and he's in logistics and transportation, not the most exciting of industries, I think. Thought leader, and he's on the board of directors in a couple of different organizations. So for him, it was really about representing his company because they were going through a complete rebrand. And he's like, okay, it's time. I have to update my profile. It's got to look good. He had some duplicate profiles. So he had a couple profiles out there that were him, but weren't him. So we had to kind of consolidate those. But it was really important for him to be considered a thought leader and an active member in his community. So what we did was, whoops, let me went too far ahead. Let me go back. Uh-oh, let me exit my full screen. All right, let's go back to his profile. Okay, let's look at it here for now. So he dialed in his profile to match the company refresh, the branding, and really adding some visual elements. And also licenses and certifications was really important for him. So now it more accurately represents him in the company. And I'm going to actually show you what his profile looked like before and then after. So we can stay here. And I know it's tiny, so let me make it a little bit bigger. So this is pretty typical. Like when I start working with people on their profiles, this is pretty standard. Like a lot of times there's not really a header image. You can see there's no header behind him. His headshot's okay, but I feel like it could be a little better. You can see like he's using the formula of, the name of his company and also his job title, but not much else in the headline area. And then you can see his profile views, like we were talking about profile views earlier. His is below that 100 mark, so he definitely wants to get those higher. Also, oops, out. Okay, then scrolling down to his experience section here, you can see it's pretty bare. Like, yeah, we can see he works at RTD Logistics, but it's, he's been there 37 years and there's not much else there for us to look at. A little bit of education. He's got some skills, but not a lot. No recommendations yet, but he's working on those. So you can tell, like, it's really hard for us to look at Scott and go, don't really know who you are. I don't really know what you do. There's no about section. That there's not much that tells us anything except that he's the head at RTD Logistics. So what we did on Scott's profile is we really focused on just like kind of bringing it all together. So we got a header image, changed up his headshot. He likes this one a little better. And then you can tell we use that formula here too. We really got in who he is, who he helps. We thought about a lot of keywords that were really important to him, got in the board of directors, got in the thought leader part, and logistics and transportation is a really important keyword. And then you'll see there's a little bit of an about section here. That really talks to the company, speaks to the company, tells us who he is. There's also a little bit of storytelling here with a little bit of trivia about the name of the organization. It also tells us how the organization started, which I love. The fast forward to a tiny space in the basement of an old factory in Boston's leather district. So it's fun. It's like you can kind of scan through his about section. And even though, it's like, okay, he has a great title, like, is he very stuffy? No, he's a human just like you and I. And there's a little bit of a story to his business and how he got to where he is today. And then he talks about some key accomplishments here, his board work here, and then the Let's Connect. So this is a really good example of a Let's Connect section as well. And then you'll see that there's a featured section, which is great. We're not going to go into too much depth on what goes into the featured section today, but this just adds a really good layer of additional information, more stuff that we can learn about him and his work in the community. And then obviously his experience section looks a little better. He's got those logos of all the licenses and certifications. He has a description here. He also has some skills. So skills are really important on your LinkedIn profile as well. They're really good keywords and they're attached to his experience section. And then we can see his board of directors here, board of directors here. His education is a little bit more beefed up. He's also got all the rest of his licenses and certifications here as well. A little bit of volunteer work here, more skills than he had in the first one. Some publications. He also has some honors and awards. So we can see it's not like it's massively different, but it is massively different in just adding all of the elements to his profile in the right places. So it does take a little bit of thought. It does take a little bit of deliberation to think through all of these different sections on your profile, but it is so worth it. Just like the before and after is very profound. Yes, Teresa, feel free to unmute.
There we go. My question is about the featured section.
Yes.
Can that be, say, like key blogs that we might have on our website for those of us who have businesses? Is
Yep.
that what the featured section is?
I would put key blogs in there. You can also put in, like, if you have, for those of you who are podcasters or have been featured on a podcast, or maybe interviewed other places, or if you have a YouTube channel, all of that can be used in the featured section. And it's nice to have a mix of things there too. You don't want all of the things to look exactly the same, like visually. Like in the featured section, 3 to 5 things in that section is perfect. So think about like a mix of 3 to 5 things to include there. And if you have some really good blogs, evergreen content, that's perfect. If you're promoting something, that can be ideal too. Like if you're doing a webinar or an event, anything like that can be highlighted in the featured section. Excellent question. Awesome. Cool. All right. So let's go back here. Let's try to go back into full screen, see if it lets me do it. All right. Here we are. So let's talk about hack number 4. So this one is going to be a little bit more specific to those of you who are business owners, just so you know, but you can use this also if you're a job seeker in creative ways too. So with calls to action, so CTA stands for call to action, for those of you who are not familiar. I like to call this sprinkling of the CTAs everywhere. So on your LinkedIn profile, you can put calls to action in a lot of places, but you have to know where to put them, where it makes the most sense. So I'm going to show you some examples here. So this first one that you're seeing on the screen, you can see like the Get My LinkedIn Profile Guide, the big arrow that's pointing towards that. That is actually, anyone can add this. And it's basically, you're just adding your website link. So just go to your LinkedIn profile and click on editing. Like you can see that little pencil icon, click to edit that intro section. And when you do that, you'll be able to add a link. It says to your website, but you can add it to like a landing page. If you have an event coming up, you want people to RSVP for that. But I like it for my LinkedIn profile guide. It gets people on my list. And it's also a guide that I'm pretty happy with. So you can always link there. And that's one of the best spots to link. LinkedIn recently added this over the last several months. And I'm really happy with it because it's like, oh, go look at my number 1 piece of content here, please. So this is a really good thing to add to your profile if you would like. There are also other places to add them. When it comes to your profile, you really do want to think through, okay, where else? What else do I want to promote on LinkedIn that would make sense for people visiting my profile? You want to learn where to add these. I'm going to show you some more examples too, don't worry. And you want to also think about how to match your opt-ins to your LinkedIn audience. Like think about your people on LinkedIn in particular. When I am on other channels, for example, if I'm in my Facebook group, there are different things I'm going to share in my Facebook group that I'm really going to share on LinkedIn, even though I do the same thing in both places, just the way that I share it, what I feel like is more appropriate for my LinkedIn audience, just a little bit different. So keep that in mind, especially for those of you who do have maybe a B2C side and a B2B side. LinkedIn is a lot more on the B2B, so business to business. If you're like working with professionals, LinkedIn is a better place than working with consumers. So B2C is business to consumer. So when you think in terms of your LinkedIn audience, make sure that what you're sharing there is appropriate for them. And then you can also consider, like for those of you who do lead magnets, you can consider designing a lead magnet just for LinkedIn in particular. And some people like to do that and make it special for LinkedIn. If that's you, that's always a good idea. So the beauty of this strategy and adding these opt-ins everywhere on your profile is that you kind of set it and forget it. Like once you add the opt-in, it's doing the hard work. Like you've done what you needed to do. And as long as people are coming to your profile, which is why it's so important to get profile views and optimize your profile, you are going to continue to get opt-ins. You're going to get people reaching out or downloading your content, RSVPing to your events. You will need some, like I said, some profile views to get enough people to opt in. That's why you want to pay attention to the rest of your profile as well. So you can get a little bit creative with where you put things on your profile when you understand where people look. And we talked about the featured section already. That's a really good place to put things. So let's take a look at how many places you can add an opt-in on your profile. So one of my favorites is this first one here, the publication section. I feel like is a really good spot. If you have a blog, if you have a podcast, if you have a book, all of those things can be linked in the publication section. So this one is a little further down the profile on most people's profiles, but it's a really good place to put your content that is a little more evergreen. And it's a really good place to let people know what you're doing too. Like, especially if you have a show, if you have a YouTube channel, that can all go under the publication section. Also, the featured section, which we talked about, you can add opt-ins in this section. So if you have a really good piece of content that you want to share, a PDF, a report, a download, something from your company, anything like that can be added in the featured section. And it shows up, it's very visual and it's right at the top of your profile. So it's a really good place to put things too. You can also use your contact info. So if you open up my contact info, it's not just my profile and email. You'll see my website is there, my blog is there, my podcast, which is mangoeffect.com, is there. My lead magnet, the LinkedIn reboot, is there. So you have three opportunities under that website section to add links to things you want people to go to. So that's a really good spot as well. All right. Also your email. Do check your email too while we're on this topic. Some people have set up their email with like an old, like a Y mail. I've seen like lots of AOLs, like from way back when. So do check your email and make sure it's the most current email on LinkedIn, and you can fix it from right inside of LinkedIn. And then another spot to add opt-ins is in your experience section. So for me, I have a business, obviously, and in that section, I have links to, okay, you can learn about my membership, you can learn about my programs, there's some testimonials in there. So that's a really good place to also put opt-ins if you have some of those that you would like to share. So hopefully that's helpful for those of you, especially those of you who have a business and are like, where can I put them where it doesn't feel like I'm like blasting people, like put them in the appropriate places. Some people will try to put them like inside their headline link. I've seen some people try to, it feels like they're shouting at you because they put them all throughout the about section. So just be thoughtful about the right places to put them, appropriate places. And these are some really good places that are appropriate. So yeah, a word on CTAs. Too many people put them in the wrong places, which makes them look salesy. But on the other hand, if you never use a call to action because you're afraid that, you're being too salesy, nobody will know how to get in touch with you or what content you have to share. So just be thoughtful. Like just think, okay, Mindy shared some examples today. Let me pick one or two of those that feel good to me, and I can add those to my LinkedIn profile. A great call to action also tells people what to do next. And I think that's the power of them. Don't think in terms of, oh, I'm like selling people, I'm trying to build my list. I'm like, we're all trying to build our list if we're in the business space and send out emails. We all understand this. But a great call to action tells people what they can do next to learn more about you. How can they learn more about your services, what you offer, what you're all about? So think in terms of, okay, I have a really good piece of content, or I have a great lead magnet, and I need to share it in a way that resonates with my people so they can be, more educated, so they can learn more about me. And I also think calls to action they do the hard work for you. So you don't feel like you're always like having to hustle out there and tell people what you do. Like people can learn about you just by downloading something that you've created. All right, so let's hop into LinkedIn profile hack number 5, and we should have some time for questions. So LinkedIn profile hack number 5, rack up the social proof. So on LinkedIn, social proof is huge. Like people trust other people on LinkedIn. So what's the deal here? We're going to talk about LinkedIn recommendations. And I get asked all the time, do my recommendations actually count? And they do. So there is a difference. Let me just clarify. There's a difference between a recommendation and an endorsement. So an endorsement is like, that list of skills, and people can just click a button to endorse you for that skill. Some people do that, and that's okay. That's great. Like sometimes I will do that for some of my connections, but a recommendation is like a testimonial. So like they're so much more powerful than somebody clicking a button. If somebody actually writes you a recommendation and sends it from their profile to you, that's a big deal on LinkedIn, and people trust recommendations. So no recommendations, no trust. That's why I like tell people, I'm like, I know, like some of you are like, oh, but do I have to ask? Yes, you do. But I would ask, like, if you don't have any right now, that's okay. Like, I'll show you some examples and we'll fix that. But it's really about asking people that that you've worked with in the past. And sometimes if you want to get started, maybe you have a colleague or somebody you have worked with in the past that you can just exchange recommendations. as long as that's in integrity. Don't make up things that are not true, but that's an easy way to get started. Like, hey, I'm trying to beef up my recommendations. Looks like you need to beef up your recommendations. Would you like to, exchange recommendations here? That's a great way to get started. That's how I actually got started with mine. Way back in the day when I worked at an agency. If you scroll through the very beginning, I had an agency. I worked inside of an agency, and we had like six of us on the team, and we all wrote recommendations for each other. And that kind of like gave us instant 5, 6 recommendations, and it was all accurate because we all worked together. So that's an easy way to do it too if you work on a small team. So you must build social proof on LinkedIn, and recommendations. That's how it's done. It's one of the ways to do it. If you have fewer than 500 connections, which many of you might, that's okay. And no recommendations though, people are a lot less likely to trust you. Okay. So just be aware. People look at how many people you're connected to. So if it's less than 500, just keep in mind that people kind of look just like a little bit like, you don't have 500 connections yet. That's okay. You don't have to, but it's helpful if you do get to 500 connections and also have recommendations. So if you're still kind of below that 500 mark, getting a recommendation or two will definitely help in the social proof aspect. So you cannot ignore your recommendation section, especially if you want leads. For those of you who are business owners, you need them. If you have people that have given you testimonials in the past, many of you probably do, and it's on your website, reach out to them and say, hey, is it okay if, can you share this same, I'll hand you the text. Can you share this same text to LinkedIn? Just reach out and ask them to share it for you, because they will have to share it. You cannot add recommendations on other people's behalfs to your profile. You have to ask them to post it. So just keep that in mind. So it's really, really important. Your LinkedIn recommendations attract new opportunities too. So when people come to your section, like this is a screenshot of mine recently. So you can see it's like, okay, like if people are coming to my profile, like, wow, I had a great 1 hour session with Mindi. Oh, cool. Mindi does 1 hour sessions. Great. And then you see Jennifer. It's like, Mindi is my go-to guru for all things LinkedIn. Oh, she must know about LinkedIn. And then Maria, like, oh, she inspires leadership. She's a genuine expert. Oh, she has a LinkedIn accelerator program. So people can learn a lot about me and what I offer just by looking at my recommendations. And so this is a really powerful way just to build your profile. What I like to recommend on recommendations is also giving twice as many recommendations as you want to get in a year. So don't just ask for them, make sure you're giving them as well, because on LinkedIn, people can see how many you have given. And mine is a little out of proportion. I think I've given like 36 and have 22. So I'm not quite to my 2 times, but I'm working on it. So I make an effort, especially if somebody speaks in my membership or, I have somebody on my podcast, I try to leave them a recommendation or something like that, just as a token of gratitude. It's a really good way to go about like spreading good mojo on LinkedIn too. So if you are thinking, okay, Mindi, how many recommendations do I actually need? I would shoot for 1 to 2 per year. That's it. Like you don't have to get like 6 next month. If you can, great, that's fine. But it's actually better if you spread out the recommendations over time versus getting like a bunch all at once, because people think, oh, wait, how'd you get all of those like all in the same time frame? It doesn't feel as authentic. So ideally, I would kind of try to spread them out over time, try to get 1 or 2 here and there. 1 or 2 per year is fantastic. So always offer to give a thoughtful recommendation to someone from whom you'd like to receive a recommendation to. It's kind of like the give and get. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but if it does make sense, just say, hey, I wrote you this recommendation. Would you mind, writing me one, or here's some text. Some people that are very busy really appreciate it if you can kind of write it for them, or like give them some text like, hey, this might be helpful as a starting point, or can you say, give them a couple bullet points. I like it when people ask me for a recommendation and they give me a couple bullet points, like focus on this, this, and this. I'm like, thank you. That makes my job a lot easier. So that's helpful for people if they want to give you a recommendation, but that they are really, really busy. All right, so let's take a look at a couple other recommendations here. So this one is for Abby, and this one is one that I wrote. So if you're thinking, how should I format these? Again, I will give you the slides after this. Look at these recommendations and you can actually kind of like reverse engineer and kind of see the formula that I use. So these are some examples of recommendations that I have given to people. So Abby and Jennifer. And then the one on the right from Brian is one that he gave me. And I really liked his approach too. I felt like how he wrote it, he's a great writer too. So I thought he did a great job in just how he how he wrote that one. And then Mike Jones is one that I wrote. So the ones that I wrote, Abby, Jennifer, Mike, and that's kind of the format that I tend to, or actually Jennifer, that was the one that she wrote for me. I think I wrote her one too. So Abby and Mike, I wrote. The other two I received. But those are really good examples if you're looking at, okay, how do I write a good recommendation? What types of things to include in that recommendation? And really thinking through and being thoughtful. Like you don't want to just do one line. Like it really should be at least a paragraph. Like Brian's and Jennifer's, theirs is a pretty good length. Mine are a little bit longer. I like to do like 3 paragraphs usually, where I'm kind of like breaking it up so people can easily scan the recommendations. But that's a really good way to just, get some good mojo on LinkedIn and also hopefully get some recommendations on your profile too. So any other questions on recommendations in LinkedIn? I'll kind of skip through this, I think, because I want to make sure that we have time for questions. Yeah, I think this is, the importance of building your LinkedIn profile, attracting the right people, kind of wrapping up, giving your prospects, I think the 1, 2, 3 steps to work with you too, because when people come to LinkedIn, they are in the mindset to do business. So just keep that in mind. Your profile is also a sales tool, but you don't want it to feel pitchy and spammy, but you do want people to find what they need to know about you professionally. So that if they do want to work with you, they go, okay, I need to work with you. You sound like a great person. And then, you don't have to do the pitch slap, which I think all of us have received. The pitch slap is when somebody sends you a connection invitation and then they follow up with like, you want to work together? Or here's more about my business, or book a discovery call here. It's free. And you're like, oh, strings attached, it just feels icky. So we want to avoid all of that on LinkedIn, and creating a great profile can actually help you avoid all of that. All right, so I will wrap it there. So I want to make sure, I know we're almost at time, but I do have a few minutes. If anybody has questions that they want to answer, I'll also look at the chat. I think I see some stuff in there. So let me look at the chat. All right. Yes, the slides will be available later. Let's see, Teresa, I have no idea what to do with my LinkedIn account, online sewing school. Like to know how to find clients or get my message out. Yeah, the first thing would be definitely to focus on the profile. Just really focus on the profile, kind of get some of those sections dialed in. And then what you'll definitely want to do once your profile is feeling good, I would reach out to people you already know. So people who have, been a part of your sewing school, anybody that you know that you can easily grow your network with, reach out and say, hey, I'm focused on my LinkedIn profile. Can we get connected on LinkedIn just to get your account? If it's not at that 500 mark yet, to get it to that 500 mark, you may also want to consider doing some content too, but also thinking through those calls to action. I think you were bringing it up too with the featured section. I would really pay attention to that just to kind of make your profile like a lead magnet for you when people are looking you up. Let's see. Yes, question. Will we have the recording for this call? Yes. Recording and slides. Okay, cool. Oh, good question from Jose. If you have your profile in 2 languages, you can do 2 audios. No, you can only do 1. So I would think about the primary person that's coming to your profile and which language you want to do it in. What you can do though for the rest of your profile though is you can actually, which is great, is you can actually translate it. So you can have it in English and you can have it in a different language too. So that is fantastic. So the rest of your profile can be translated and can be in both languages. So that's something I would definitely look at, Jose. But unfortunately, the audio doesn't switch over. It's just 1. All right, let's see. Question from Teresa, can the feature section be key blogs? Okay, we talked about that on your website. Perfect. Question from Sandy. In order to get to 500 connections, should we just, good question. Should we just accept every invitation we receive, or should we be selective? Oh, this is where I get on my hobby horse about which invitations we accept. Okay, when it comes to growing your LinkedIn network, there are 2 schools of thought. There are some people who are in what I call the open networkers camp, which they will accept anyone and everyone, especially to get to that 500. They're like, once I get to that 500, then I'll deal with it. There are other people on the other side of things, which is where I am, which I like to be strategic. Like I feel like my connections are people that I truly want to have a professional relationship with. And right now I feel like my network is a little too big. So I'm actually going to be going through and kind of like streamlining people from like way back in the day when I was in real estate and other things. I'm like, okay, we really don't
So,
have
what did you
much to
think?
do together
Did you like the
anymore.
episode?
So I
Fun
really want to
conversation, right?
streamline mine and
Kristen
make
and
mine more
Carol are
strategic. And I
amazing
am
and so
of
fun
the
to talk
belief
to.
that
I could
you
have
should
talked with them for
really
another
feel
hour.
good that it feels
So, if
mutually
you love
beneficial
the
to
podcast,
accept
again,
a
go
connection
check out
invitation from
Where
people
Next.
or
Make sure to
send one. Like
subscribe.
it should be
They are
beneficial to
amazing. They get
both
the
of you.
best
If it
guests
is
too,
not, if
and
it's
the
not
most
obviously
cool
mutually
places
beneficial,
around
don't
the
accept.
planet. So give it a
Free
listen.
connection
And
invitation.
if you
If you
like
have
this
the inkling that
podcast, the
they're
Mango
going to
Effect
pitch you,
podcast, be sure to tune in
just
to the
don't
next
accept,
episode
because
next week.
sometimes they will,
If you
and then
like what you hear,
sometimes they will
please
just
subscribe
continue
wherever
pitching
you
you,
listen to
and then you're like,
podcasts so you
either
don't
have
miss an
to
episode.
remove the
And I'd be
connection if
thrilled
they're
if you
really
could write a
irritating, or
5-star
mute
review for the
them,
show
or
if you are
archive their
loving it.
messages.
We
So
are a new
in
show, so
terms
any
of
reviews and
your network
subscribes
is
will
special,
definitely help us
and
as
when
we
you
grow.
treat them as
I
such,
will
when the
talk to you in
people
the next
inside of
episode.
your
Bye for
network
now.
are considered very special and you really value that relationship, you have the opportunity to be strategic. Just pick the people that you actually want to be connected with. And if you're not sure, you can just ignore it. That's totally fine. People are not notified if you ignore their connection invitation. So don't feel like, oh, they're going to know, unless they're like tracking them in a spreadsheet, which most people are not. They are not going to know if you accepted or did not accept their connection invitation. So I would actually go slower. Even if you're trying to get to that 500 mark, maybe send more connection invitations instead of waiting for them. Send to people that send to other people in the space. The easiest people to get connected with are people you're in community with. So like Mindvalley Lifebook, like boom, there's people that you can get connected with, people that were here in the workshop together. It's like, okay, there's a bunch of people that you could get connected with that just went through the same experience. That's how I tend to grow my network, is really thinking about the communities and the networks that I'm a part of and getting connected with people that I've interacted with in those settings. It's a great way to grow your network. All right. Let's see if there's anything else in the chat. Okay. Adulka, I think you added, how do you do this in 2 languages? Google LinkedIn, type into a Google chat, because I don't have the link in front of me, LinkedIn help, and then put 2 languages, like in just like a Google search, and a LinkedIn help article will pop up where you'll be able to put it in both languages. I don't have mine in that, and I can't show an example, but it's pretty simple to do. It's a really good question. Kathy, if you're still employed, but you are running a coaching business, good question. Can you have 2 profiles, or should you work that out for LinkedIn? You are not alone, Kathy. A lot of us are in similar places, or we're doing multiple things. And so it is okay. It used to be kind of frowned upon to have, if you're in a day job, like, oh, I can't put my side hustle or anything else on my profile. That has shifted, especially since the pandemic. Many of us are wearing multiple hats and doing a lot of different things. And employers understand this. Like, I just did a corporate training, and one of the corporate employees that was in that training came to me afterwards and said, let's talk about my side hustle. Like, how do I do this? And the company is totally fine with her, having this side hustle. It's in a similar line of work, but as long as your work is separate and there's no conflict of interest, it's fine. So it's okay. So I think, first of all, just know it's okay. A lot of people are in the same position. You do not want to have 2 profiles. If you have 2 profiles, LinkedIn will frown upon it. And if they figure out that it's the same person with 2 profiles, they don't like that, and it can be considered a little bit spammy. So do not create 2 profiles. If you have 2 profiles out there, there is a way to merge them. So I know I've come across some people and they're like, I started one and then there's another one of me out there, and what do I do? Type in LinkedIn help and merge duplicate profiles. Like, just put that in there and you will find the instructions on how to merge those or get rid of a duplicate. You only want to have one LinkedIn profile. Okay, so one LinkedIn profile for yourself. You can have multiple, if you have multiple companies, you can have multiple LinkedIn pages, but only one personal profile. And so what you'll want to do is you want to think through the profile, like, okay, how important is my side hustle or my other business versus like my day job? Or, if you have multiple businesses, which one is most important for LinkedIn? Prioritize that one. But you can definitely in your headline put like 2 different things. If you have 2 different roles, just kind of separate them with that line break in the middle so people understand you do 2 different things. So that's a way to kind of work through it. You can also, in the experience section, you can play with the order of things. So if you have 2 present, or 2 or 3 or more present current experiences, you can move them around. So put the most important one at the top, and then, order them below that accordingly. So that's another way to kind of work through that. And then think about the content and types of people you're trying to connect with. Like, are you trying to get, if you're trying to use LinkedIn to grow your business, probably want to prioritize your business and just make sure your day job is there. So you feel like in alignment and in integrity. But you will want to speak a little bit more to the people that you're trying to attract for your business and your about section. Just kind of keep that in mind. Like, okay, who am I trying to attract with my LinkedIn profile? And then if there are other elements that need to be there, how do I make sure they're there? Most of us are doing, like I said, multiple things. So that's fine. Teresa, is following, good question. Is following the same thing as a connection? So following is not the same thing as a connection. So following is basically if somebody follows you, then that means they're following your content. So if you're not sharing any content, they're not really going to see much, but they're technically following you. So that's fine. If they are connected to you, that means you can have that two-way conversation. So a connection is much more valuable than a follower, like especially if that two-way connection, you want to message them, you want to be connected in that way, then that is important. For example, there are some people that are really, like the big thought leaders and they share wonderful content. I just follow them. I tend to not send them connection invitations because it's not going to get through anyways. And I just want to keep up on their content. So following, you'll see their content connection. You can message back and forth and you're a part of each other's networks. And that shows up to people too. So when you're connected to people, people can see that you are connected to them. So keep that in mind with the people you accept into your network. All right. So Hala, hopefully I said that close enough. If LinkedIn would be the right place to show up as a visual artist, or is it only for classic business? Good question. So as a visual artist, I would definitely make sure to have a profile. I would definitely make sure like your business is represented there. Do you need to spend a ton of time on LinkedIn? Probably not, unless you are doing some stuff in the B2B space, like with other businesses or collaborations, anything like that. You may need to, do a little bit of work on LinkedIn, but otherwise, just set up your profile, make sure it's accurate and up to date. Work on that headline, a little bit of an about section, make sure your company is there as well, just in case people are looking you up. But you may want to spend more time on other channels if you are working more with consumers than, with other business professionals. But you still should be there. That's the thing I want everyone to take away. Every professional should have a LinkedIn profile. Letitia, if you have an NGO, could it also be integrated or can that be separate? It's up to you. If you want it to be integrated or separate, Letitia, it is complete, it's fine to do it either way. I would make sure it is listed on your profile. It would be nice if it also had like a LinkedIn page, and just is connected to your profile. So that's how I would handle that. And then last question, Adulka, do people see your messages to a particular person? Okay, good question. With a particular person, if you are messaging, so if you're in your LinkedIn messages and you're going back and forth with somebody, nobody can see that except for you and the person or persons, because you can have more people in that chat than just you. Only you and the person or persons can see that messaging going back and forth. What people can see on LinkedIn is if you are commenting, if you're sharing a post that is public, then people can see what you're sharing there or commenting on publicly on LinkedIn. But in messages, that is all private. So you don't have to worry about that at all. And I spend a lot of time in my messages, and it is like, I know we didn't get to go into depth into that today, but the magic happens in your messages on LinkedIn. Like I spend like at least 15, 20 minutes per day responding to people, doing business, like meeting new people, having conversations. And it's a highlight for me. Like it's super fun. So once you get your profile optimized and you start getting connected with really cool people or following up with people you've met elsewhere on LinkedIn, your messages is like a happy place. Like you get to go in there and like keep those conversations going. And it is where the opportunities come from. But you got to start with the profile and then really focus on the network and getting the right people in there. And you'll notice that the quality of those messages goes up. And a lot of people will tell me, well, Mindi, it's all spam in there. I'm like, well, how many connection invitations are you sending? Like, who are you reaching out to? Like, are you starting the conversation or just waiting for people to come to you? Because when you initiate and you lead the conversation and you lead with that connection invitation, you get to choose what shows up in your messages, and your messages will all of a sudden shift from being people selling you stuff to actual good conversations about your industry, your niche, and helping and supporting each other. So that's pretty cool. Adulka, yes, I will give another class in the future for sure. So be on the lookout. I want to go a little bit more into, and if you guys have feedback too, I think networking and just kind of like building a LinkedIn network, I think would be really good, and kind of how to build on what we talked about today. So if you have suggestions for a future workshop or class, just feel free to ping me as well. And I also have the chat, so I'll make sure to look through the chat and follow up with anyone. But this has been great. Anything else that you want, feel free to reach out to me. My email, I will pop it in the chat. It's Mindi @Rosser. So pretty straightforward, mindirosser.com. You can also look for me on LinkedIn. Just say, hey, Mindi, I was at the workshop today. And I would love to connect with you as well and keep the conversation going. I will also post the slides and the recording for Lifebookers. I'll put it in the Lifebook space, so it'll be there. For those of you from Mindvalley, I will make sure to share it with you over there too. So we'll be good in both places. And yeah, my LinkedIn. Oh, let me put that in the chat. I can put that in the chat. Just hop over to LinkedIn. I'll leave it up there for a minute. Yeah, feel free to connect with me. It'd be awesome. I think that's it for today. If you have anything else, just reach out, let me know. And thank you so much for participating today. And I will get the recording and everything up as soon as possible, so you'll have that to refer to too. All right. Bye for now. Bye. Thank you so much. Mahalo. Yes. Mahalo.